friends, what's going on? This is Andy coming to you from my music room here at my house in Colorado, and today it's a beautiful morning and I feel good, happy to be alive. I'm going to share with you a couple little stories, some stuff that I think you'll find useful. I'm not going to do a lot of playing in this video, so if you're one of those shut up and play kind of guys, you might want to change the channel now, because I'm mostly just going to talk to you today, because the best way for me to illustrate the lessons to be learned here is just by talking about them. I'm going to talk to you about how some three days in my life that really changed the way that I thought about being a fundamental bass player when the time is when it's needed. Okay, I'm going to go back to it was like 1990, and I just moved to Tampa, Florida. I was playing with an original band called Clang. We were putting out CDs and we were touring around and doing showcases and trying to get signed and doing that thing. But in the meantime, I had been playing blues gigs, and that's where I was making some bread. So I just relocated to Tampa, Florida, and I didn't know that many people. So I started going around to the blues jams that were going on down there. And I quickly made friends with and became acquainted with a guy by the name of James Peterson. He's the father of the famous blues star who's currently on the scene now, Lucky Peterson. Well, I played with his dad, and he had a jam session at this place called the Blues Ship, which was a great blues club down in the old cigar district of Tampa called Ybor City. And at that time, it was like this up-and-coming bohemian cool scene with lots of bookstores and coffee shops and music venues and stuff. So one of the first venues down there was called the Blues Ship. Well, I went down there and I started hanging around there at the jam. And I must have made a pretty decent impression on him, because he came up to me and he said, "Look, next week we're playing here Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 3 nights. You can play all 3 nights in the house band, and it pays $40 a night." And at the time I was like, heck yeah, thanks, this is a great opportunity. Well, I was I was 21 at the time, and I was full of piss and vinegar, let's just say. So this is a series of events that's pretty interesting. The first night that I went out there, I kind of had this attitude going on where it's like I got something to prove or whatever. And I was slapping and just being real kind of overly aggressive or whatever, playing like I was starving for attention. I know you know the type. And at the end of the gig, it was kind of like a lukewarm reception at best. They were just like, all right, yeah, see you later. And I was kind of thinking, wow, nobody came up and told me how awesome I was. Well, they weren't impressed. Okay, the next day, at the time I was working for a landscaping company, and I was cutting lawns, okay, for my day job. And I don't know if you've ever cut lawns in Florida at 95 degrees with 100% humidity. It's a miserable job. So the next morning I had to go, and I had to be there at 6:45 in the morning, and then I'm cutting lawns all day long, okay? And so I come back to the gig the next night. Now it's Wednesday night, and I'm dead tired. I'm so tired, I can barely stand up. And I go in on the gig, and that night I'm so tired that all I can do is just play meat and potatoes. Boom, 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 boom. I have no energy for anything else. Well, at the end of that night, James, the boss man of the band, comes up to me and he's like, "Man, you sounded killer tonight, man. You were killing it, man. That was it, man. That was totally happening." And I'm going, when I don't play anything, they love it. When I try and play all my Superfly stuff, it's not even the slightest bit impressive to them. Okay, now here's what happened on the third night, which is important. This is the important thing, is that I came back on the third night, and James, the leader of the band, now he says, he's like making me part of a feature of the show, and he's saying, "Check out my bass player, man. He's grooving. He grooves so hard. Check him out." And then he says, "Go ahead and get some now." So then he rewarded me by giving me a bass solo and making it a feature in the show. And from that point on, that's the relationship that we had. When I played meat and potatoes, I made him happy. He's trying to sing the song. He's trying to tell his stories. These blues guys, a lot of times they're just rapping, or they're just telling these stories. And sometimes we would do like the Stand By Me changes, literally for 15 minutes. Stand By Me changes, just for 15 minutes. And just telling stories. And when they're trying to tell them stories, they're easily distracted. The entertainer is trying to entertain his audience and connect with them. And they can be easily distracted if we're back there goofing around on the bass. So I learned, you go out there, you play the meat and potato stuff where you have to, and then you get rewarded with your bass solo, and you get your little feature in the show. Now, that was the 3 days that really was kind of an epiphany, okay? Another story I want to tell you about briefly came many years later, about 10 years later. I got hired to go out to LA to play with a pop artist, relatively well-known pop artist, and it was a good gig. For me, it was a good gig. They flew me out there. They paid me a couple $1,000s. I had to play, they're $200 a song, 10 songs. We're recording at Conway. And, you know, it's kind of a big session. Some big name players on it. One of Stevie Wonder's drummers on the gig. And, you know, it was kind of a big gig for me at that point in my life. So I learned the songs. They send me the stems. I get them down. And I got this attitude like, I'm going to go in there and I'm just going to play meat and potatoes and give these guys the best fundamental bass lines, and they're going to love it. So I go in and I record the first 3 tracks. I get them on the first or second pass because I'm really well prepared on the tunes. And then they're like, oh, let's take a little break. And I'm in the control room recording, right? So they say, would you mind stepping outside just for a minute? We need to have a little discussion. And I'm like, uh-oh. Okay, yeah, no problem. So I go outside and I'm standing out in the courtyard there, and Kenny Arnoff comes walking by, which was pretty cool. I talked to him for a minute. So then they call me back in. They go, come on back in. I'm thinking, okay, I'm about to get fired. They don't like what I'm doing. They're about to dunce cap me and send me home. I couldn't believe it. The producer says, and the artist, they kind of sit me down. They're like, well, you know, we were watching some of your videos, you know, and you know, like, you know, with the slapping and, you know, like the lead bass and stuff like that. That's kind of what we want, you know, that's kind of what we hired you for, is for that flashy stuff. And I'm going, really? I mean, no problem, you know, I got tons of that stuff. We can definitely go in that direction. I thought you would want the meat and potato stuff. And they're like, nah, we got the meat and potato stuff going on with the synth bass. We want to bring in the electric bass to bring that flavor and that flashy kind of side of the funkiness of the electric bass. So then the session went in a completely different direction. And it was grid work. I call it grid work when you're working on Pro Tools and it's all on, everything snapped onto a grid, and you just lay down your parts and then they fly it all over the place. What ended up happening is they used mostly synth parts for all the verses and choruses and stuff like that. And I played along to it, and my track was kind of just buried in there. But anytime that there was a